Hi, in this quick lesson I'm going to show you a history of digital currency. So we all know that Bitcoin is extremely popular, a lot of people are talking about it, but how do we get there? And what kinds of steps did we go along the way in order to get to actually using Bitcoin? So what we're going to do is we're going to look at the history of digital currency, we're going to look at the Byzantine general problem. We're also going to take a look at some of the inventions that were made by using what we call the blinding formula, how that blinding formula was used in a project called Digicash, and then we'll also talk about a project called EGold and discuss kind of how that came and went. And kind of talk about some of the pain points that we went through over the history of digital currency and kind of talk about where these pain points or how maybe some of these pain points might have led us to the Bitcoin phenomenon. So let's go ahead and get started. So if you need to get a hold of me, my name is Tommy Cooksey. Here's my email address, tcooksey1972@gmail.com. And also, if you'd like to make any donations, I am an independent contractor and I do these videos for free. So that is my Ethereum wallet address, and I appreciate any donations you might send my way. Thanks. All right, so where do digital currencies actually come from and why do they exist? So, you know, as we said before, this Byzantine general problem, or this problem that we think of as this Byzantine general, really what this means is this means that in the traditional sense, there was actually, I think it was about like 1983, I think I might have some notes here, and about 1983 is when this paper actually came to fruition, I think, and it was called the Byzantine generals problem. And if we click this little link here, I think it'll actually open this up in Wikipedia and kind of talk about this. And so when we think about this Byzantine generals problem, what in essence this represents is it's the ability in computer science for us to use messaging, which represents multiple generals or Byzantine generals surrounding the city of Rome. They're all going to attack the city of Rome, but if one was a bad actor or two was a bad actor, it would cause all of them to fail. So it's important that they have good messaging between them, and we don't have a bad actor that says, hey, I'm going to attack to half of the other generals, and then say, I'm not going to attack and retreat to the other half of the generals. We don't want that kind of problem. And so in order to fix that kind of problem, what we need to have is we need to have a systems of messaging that allows all of the individuals involved to basically broadcast all the messages that they are aware of to all of the other systems. And then they verify the messages. And so this, in essence, is the problem that Bitcoin was able to solve. And this was the problem that was able to be fixed by the Byzantine general problem. So in essence, what that was, or what that did by fixing this problem using this messaging and mining and some of the other concepts that we have in Bitcoin, we'll talk about that in our lesson tomorrow. But it's a new way to create trust in a trustless environment. So as I mentioned before, if somebody just copied and pasted something and then created two copies of it and sent it to two different people, well, then they have two different sets of value, or they have two different digital entities. And we need the ability to report that something is not going to give that capability. Or so we want to reverse the ability of giving somebody the ability to do the copy and paste and create multiple copies of the same thing. And so, and when they do that, that's, you know, of course, that's kind of the reverse of finite. So how do you keep someone from doing that? And so, again, Bitcoin was the first time that we solved this problem. And it was not just about creating digital cash, but what that really did is it actually fixed this computer science problem that gave us the ability to have trust in a trustless environment. And that's the key to making this beautiful blockchain type cryptocurrency and all of these amazing attributes in decentralization, immutability, cryptographic data that gives an anonymity and autonomy and transparency. This all stems from this Byzantine general problem. So we need to just kind of keep that in mind, and we need to kind of keep a good understanding of kind of how this whole concept works. All right. So hopefully everybody has a pretty good understanding now of what a digital currency is, or, you know, kind of where did this concept of a digital currency come from? Why does it exist? Again, we want to provide trust in a trustless environment. We want to fix this Byzantine generals problem. So how are we going to go about doing that? All right, so when we think about this concept, oops, went one too far. So when we think about this concept, in 1983, there was a gentleman by the name of David Chaum, and I put a link in here for it. So let's go out and take a look at David Chaum on Wikipedia, and we'll see that David is actually a computer scientist and a cryptographer, and he developed EGash, and back in and he also founded Digicash, and that's really what I want to be talking about. But there's David there, and so we're going to go out and talk about David here for a second. And so he invents a digital cash system, and he did this back in 1983. And the way that what he was able to do is he was able to create a system that would allow you to generate and mark digital currency and create digital currency and mark that digital currency as valid without having to have a central authority to look at every single transaction. And so what that did was it was using signatures and some other things, but in essence it allowed to mark digital currency as valid without a central authority. So it allows us to modify information without the permission or of the information sender, basically. So the ability to look at the individual units of currency and to know if that is a legitimate unit of currency or not. The ability to mark a token as being a legitimate token or not. Okay, and so that happened in about 1983. And so let's go back here. And so what David did is he actually took that technology and pole vaulted it into a company in 1990 that actually employed another great cryptographer by the name of Nick Szabo. And we'll talk about Nick when we get into smart contracts. But Nick Szabo, actually, some think that Nick might be Satoshi Nakamoto. But Nick Szabo is very important in this concept because later on we're going to talk about smart contracts, and Nick Szabo kind of gave birth to that. So what they did with Digicash is they went in and they actually were in the Netherlands, and they decided that they were going to create a digital money. And when they did this, they drew the attention of the government there in the Netherlands, and the central banks restricted that they didn't like what they were doing here, and they restricted them to basically only selling the product to banks. And so they actually kind of inked a deal with Microsoft, believe it or not. And so they started working on creating this digital peer-to-peer spending functionality, and it was going to be included in all Windows desktops, much like what you see with Outlook and Internet Explorer and things like that back in those days. And interestingly enough, it kind of fell through. The deal kind of fell through. Somebody maybe thought they weren't getting enough money or wasn't getting paid well. But Digicash kind of just fell to the wayside, and it didn't quite make it. So it was based on, and so let's kind of talk about Digicash. When we think about Digicash, what was it based on? It was actually based on a web of trust, where we would just have really centralized banking systems that would set up a network of trust or a web of trust, and it was really limited to only products that would be used within the banks. So, what that did is, it allowed us to create that consortium within those banks, but it wasn't really a blockchain. It was really more of a centralized system or a centralized web of trust, really kind of what you would see with a Hyperledger or Corda, or something along those lines. So interestingly enough, after the Microsoft deal fell through, Digicash kind of went bankrupt, and it kind of just fell to the wayside. Even though it did kind of fall to the wayside, this concept of digital money, we were still thinking about this concept of digital money, but something new actually kind of caught traction at this point, and that was PayPal. So let's talk about that. So PayPal gets its start, and I don't actually remember exactly when PayPal hit the market. I think it was in the late 90s. I don't have a note here for that, but anyway, I could look that up for you guys in the next video. So anyway, PayPal gets its start, and one of the things that we find out with PayPal is it was first used on Palm Pilots. And so in essence, if you don't remember what a Palm Pilot was, it was in essence a piece of a device that we would carry around that we couldn't really make phone calls on, but it would allow us to kind of keep our calendar and keep all of our stuff in there and our emails and some things like that, and allow us to do some quick communication through it. I believe that it did, some later versions actually didn't allow you to make phone calls and some things, but for the most part, it was somewhat limited, and it would be very much limited if you were to compare it to an iPhone or any kind of digital phone that we use, an Android or any phone that we use today. But, and more importantly enough, is it was a device that allowed you to create a settlement system, right? So you could send a cash settlement or a cash settlement payment to another individual based on the backing of some other payment system, like your credit card or your checking account or something like that. And so it really wasn't a cash system. It was just simply, like I said, a settlement system, because you're not really owning a PayPal, right? You own a Bitcoin, but you're not owning a PayPal. You have a PayPal account that's connected to your bank, and then that's how you pay. But it's just a settlement system. It's not really what I would consider a blockchain solution or a peer-to-peer cash system. And that's what we're looking to build. So again, even though it was a digital cash idea, it's really being diluted in favor of just this settlement system, because PayPal is getting their cut, the bank gets their cut. We're not really sending cash from one person to another. We're still going through that system, or that digital payment system through PayPal. So that is a problem that we found. With PayPal is a couple of things that we discovered with PayPal. Let's just kind of break this down. Is that we discovered that people do like easy to use cash payment systems. They also want those cash payment systems to be browser based if possible, and also if we can take and make this easy to use for the user is going to adopt it. And that was some of the things that we learned. And then some of the things that we took away from that is that the middleman, or the centralized PayPal system, the centralized bank, in this case, was the kind of the preference of usage over the direct connection. So that's another lesson learned from this as well. All right, so in 1996, there was a company called EGold, and EGold was actually founded, I got a picture of them here, in Florida, and this company was a digital currency, much like what David Chaum created, but this digital currency was actually backed by gold. And so what was really interesting is, like, you could log onto their website and you could see the balance of your account. You could go in and you could see how much gold was in the coffers or the holdings that were available to ensure that the company was indeed holding the amount of gold that they needed in order to be able to back whatever the level of receipts that they had out, right? So they were basically had a digital currency that was backed by gold. And so one of the problems that we found is that early on, there was a lot of reports of EGold really just allowing anyone into their platform, allowing anyone to kind of do and use their product. And so by doing that, they attracted not only the good guys, but also the bad guys. And so there was a lot of cyber crime, pornography, drugs, things along those lines that were using EGold as a payment method. Now, interestingly enough, the guys at EGold actually helped collar some of these criminals. They helped collar some criminals from the Cisco firewall code that was stolen and put up for sale. They also helped some 3,000 suspected child pornographers were collared from the Center for Missing Children and Exploited Children. And they were actually using information that was provided to them from EGold. Now, that was all good until 9/11 happened. And then once 9/11 happened, actually the rules to the game changed quite a bit. And the Patriot Act was passed. And when the Patriot Act was passed, what happened is basically, I'll kind of read through this. The Patriot Act was passed in wake of September 11th. More than 5 years after EGold had been launched, it made it a federal crime to operate and transfer money, to operate a money transmitter business without a state money transmitter license. And any state required a license. So at the time, a money transmitter license in most states defined as a business that cash checks, like a MoneyGram or a Western Union. So, however, in its actions from 2006 to 2008, the U.S. Treasury Department stretched the definition of a money transmitter to the U.S. Patriot Act to include a system that allowed to transfer any kind of value from one person to another. Therefore, it included EGold, and therefore EGold went down. So what happened? The feds came in. They raided the place there in Florida. They took all of their gold. It was the amount of EGold in circulation in tons, almost 2.6 metric tons to 3.5 metric tons of gold that were actually taken from the EGold seizure by the U.S. government. Even though EGold went to court for this, they were tied up for so long that by the time it got out of court, the system had completely failed. So a lot of lessons to learn here. So things that we learned. Okay, let's think about this for a second. Humans like digital money, and digital currency is going to be used. It's going to be adopted. And just because you have a tool, you shouldn't let your morality judge the tool. The tool can be used for both good things and for bad things. We hear this same argument with guns. It's the same thing with digital currency. Don't hate the tool, hate the person that's using the tool for the bad reason. That would be my recommendation for you. So hopefully that makes sense to everyone. Hopefully we were able to relay some good information to you about the history of why digital currency is important, some of the history of the different ways that digital currency has been used over the years, and I've been able to shed some light on some of this stuff. So tomorrow, in my next video, what I want to do is I want to talk about Bitcoin and the rise of Bitcoin in the digital currency era, and how Bitcoin was able to fix some of these problems of centralization and having a centralized authority that we could take those funds away from. And so I hope you have enjoyed this video. Again, if you like it a lot, I please ask that you give me a like, give me a thumbs up, subscribe, and I'll send out lots more videos. Thanks and have a great day.